Welcome to the Jackson Sewing Academy Saturday Live. I'd like to welcome you here, and I'd like to welcome you to our new studio. This studio looks pretty much like our old studio, but it is in my home, and I love that. I love the opportunity to work from my home and just the flexibility that it gives me. In today's Saturday Live, this is a task that was given to me by one of our students. If you are a member of the Jackson Sewing Academy, you will have access to this video. It is under the title 1/8 rolled hem, and that particular hem is usually used on formal wear. We have done other rolled hems, but this is a really narrow rolled hem, usually on formal fabrics like chiffons, fine satins. A lot of your bridesmaids and even your wedding gowns will have this type of hem. There are a lot of methods to do this, but what I have found in my experience is the method I'm going to show you will always create the most accurate, and every time it's going to work out. So I want to start you first by showing how we mark this particular hem. This is very important. I have watched videos online where people are, let's say this dress we're going to hem 4 inches. They just mark 4 inches all around on the original hem, and that is where you're going to have some problems. Never assume that the original garment is even in the first place. A couple of things to consider. When dresses are mass produced, what happens is they are cut in various patterns, whether it's cut on a bias, the fabric can just be a little bit more drapey. If you were making this item in your own home, what you would do is create the skirt, let it hang for a bit, then you put it on, and then we cut the hem. That allows for any draping, any areas that are going to fall a little bit more. That will take care of that. In a mass-produced section, that's not going to happen. We're just going to cut out the skirt, put in your hems, and then throw it on the dress. So you may find that the hem is not going to be even from the beginning. So if you decide to hem your skirt 3 inches all the way around and it's not even, you're going to have a dress or a skirt that is 3 inches shorter, and it's still not going to be even. Another thing to consider is the person wearing the garment. Depending on whether they have a full bosom, whether they have fuller bust, or even a fuller front, those areas are going to take up more area in your skirt. So when the person is wearing that, our goal is to make sure that the garment is parallel to the floor when they're wearing it. And marking your skirt using this method will guarantee that all the time. Once you have marked your skirt, one thing to always remember when you're doing your work: trust your marks. I say that because there are many times I have had a skirt, let's say it's a big circular Georgette or chiffon type skirt, and as I'm doing the hem at my machine, it's looking off to me. But that's just the way it is on the table. I know that when I marked it on my client, it was perfectly parallel. If I hem my dress to that, it's going to be perfect, and that's what we're going to want. So let's begin with our marking. I'd like to introduce you to my chalk skirt marker. This is one I've gotten from Wawak, and a lot of seamstresses don't even know this exists. This is what I was taught to do my hems, and this is what I use all the time when marking my hems. It's going to be on the floor. You're going to raise your chalk area that goes poof to the floor or wherever your client wants their finished garment. And then as you go around, you're going to squeeze the little ball, and it's going to make a little poof of chalk. What's great with this is it will also put that poof of chalk through to the lining a lot of times. So that helps me with my lining, that it's going to be marked. So let's start here. Our client is not very active today. She's just my mannequin. You need to make sure that the garment is hanging down far enough. She's standing on a raised platform. You are going to need to have a raised platform to use this type of marker, unless you're marking a skirt that is not floor length, but this works perfectly for floor length. You're always going to want to make sure that your client has their shoes on, because that can make a big difference, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches depending on the height of heel. So first thing we do is take our chalk marker, and we want to adjust the head of the poof right at the floor and secure that into place. And that's all you need to do for that step. Now, I'm making sure that with my skirt, both layers, the lining and the skirt layer, is hanging straight down. Position your chalk marker very close and poof, we have a line. If we're lucky, that line went through, and yes, it did. You can actually see it more on the lining. So I'm going to reposition that. Always make sure your client is looking straight ahead as well. If they start bending down, then that will cause a distortion. I'm just going to go around. You may be wondering how close these chalk pieces should be. This is considered a full skirt, but I wouldn't consider it an extra full skirt. An extra full skirt might be one of those really full circle skirts. You could have, meters of fabric. As long as your chalk proofs are about 4 inches apart, 4 to 6, you don't have to have one continuous line. Because when you're sewing, you can only sew and focus on your tabletop within a 4 to 6 inch area. That's all you need when you're doing this marking. Over here, start on this side. I'm going to mark right to the side seam. Sure that's marked. That's good, 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 good. And I'm going to ask my client to turn around. The reason I'm having a turn around too, my pedestal is rounded partially in the front, but it's got a square back. If you're ever having a pedestal made for you, the ideal would be a round one or a hexagonal. That way your dress is always going to hang over top and you're not going to have a lot of sharp corners. So that is why when I don't have one like that, I will have my client turn around. And if needed, help guide her to be as close to the edge as possible, but make sure safety is always important. So there we go. Now we can do the back part. I'm going to make sure my lining is pinning straight down. And that is it for our marking. I love this method because it is pretty quick. And I know it's going to be accurate. We have a continuous chalk line all around. And we can see that on our lining. For marking, that's all we need at this point. While I'm transitioning to the sewing machine, I want to talk about pricing for a garment such as this. I consider this to be a full skirt, and therefore I would charge $40 per layer. With this having the 2 layers, this is going to be an $80 hem, which means I'm going to want to make sure I get this hem done within 2 hours. That keeps me at my $40 mark. If I get it done sooner, then I am making better finds. So let's move to the sewing machine. So this is going to be the same technique that you will find in the Jackson Sewing Academy. What I am going to attempt is when we do our lining, I did find another tutorial that Erin wants to know. The marking tool that I used is from Wawak, WAWAK.ca if you're Canadian, and wawak.com for the US site. That's where I got in this. It is, I think it was about $50 and one of the best purchases. One thing I want to show you is mine is a combination of 2. I'll tell you. The black area, you see, was one of my original ones, and then I did buy one that had the handle. My grandson was over visiting in my studio, and somehow my poofer for the one with the handle got lost, and I've never been able to find it. So I never used the handle one for a while. I liked it because I do like the handle. It helps me stand up afterwards when I'm on the ground now. But what I did was my black one, it actually got bent by standing by a heater. Oh well. This, I put the pole in there just yesterday to help hold it up, and that's why it's this one has the handle. But just so you know, I'm pretty sure Wawak has 2 types, the black and the one with the handle, but either one would work. I can't remember because it's been so long since I've had these, but that's why mine looks a little, it's kind of like a hybrid. I need that handle to help me get off the floor, I tell ya. Okay. I love this with the chalk as well because it doesn't leave any marks, any residual like you would see with a wax chalk. So what I was saying is when we start marking our lining, I am going to use a different technique. There are many little tutorials you will find online, and there was one that kind of caught my eye. I wouldn't use it for my chiffon. Primarily, I'll explain why I wouldn't. but I am going to give it a try with the lining. And this is just a test dress. This doesn't belong to anyone. So should something not work out, no biggie, but I wouldn't try something like that with a customer. But we are going to try one of the ones I'd seen on Facebook, a little hack that I'd seen. One of the reasons I wouldn't use this hack with my chiffon, it involves using, I think, like a dissolving stabilizer that you would use for embroidery. And I would be concerned that even though a really fine area will be left inside my skirt, that it would show. I would also be concerned that it might not dissolve like it's supposed to. So I wouldn't try that with someone else's garment, and especially with the chiffon. But I don't mind trying today using the lining. Our first step is we are going to unattach our skirt lining and our outer skirt at the tacks that you'll find at the center back and the side seams. And I will separate our lining and our outer material where they join. That will help us to create cleaner hems for each of them, because our chiffon is rolled towards the wrong side and our lining is too. It's just done differently. How our lining is done, the good side faces out, so on the inside you are seeing all their work. I'm just going to undo that to make it a little easier for us, especially since I'm doing a different technique. So what I'm going to do first is just undo our stitching. There is top stitching or edge stitching and some regular stitching. This is going to be our new line, our new hem line. So about 1 inch below and a couple inches above our new hem is where I'm going to take out some of that stitching. Get something sharp. I have a question for my viewers at this point. How many of you do work on formal wear, whether it's bridesmaids or do either any of you work on bridal at all? I'd be curious and to find out. I know a couple of you do. What I'm doing to do my removals, I start a couple stitches and then I grab one end and just pull out the stitches. So now I've got a tail. I'm just going to get that pulled. And now my seam is out. You can use a razor blade, but I'm a little bit more cautious with slinky fabrics and my razor blade. So the other side just the same. I'm going to clip my edge stitching 2 or 3 inches above my new hem. Clip the edge stitching here. Lift it up a little. Oh, that's not dead. I just stopped and started their stitching. One thing to keep in mind is that when you are a member, this particular sewing technique in the studio, in the classes, you will be able to see very close up of what I am doing. I have some answers now to my question. Let's take a look and see. We have Erin. Erin does some bridal wear. Yeah. And Kim. Welcome, Kim. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I'm glad you found me too, Kim. I find it hard focusing on 2 things at once. I'll get this going. So, and Michelle does has been with me for a bit too. Pull the string. Of all fabrics in the world, this chiffon fabric is the one I do not like the most. And if there was ever a fabric that I would not want to make anything out of, it would be this one. I would not want to do anything with this, other than hemming and shortening it, but I would not make anything. Okay, that's just my opinion. A lot of time people will ask me what my favorite materials are. So now what I'm going to do, I do not need to undo any more stitching at that point. I just cut the 2 layers apart. And I'm switching to the other side, same thing. I've got it open by my area I need to work, and then the rest I'm just going to cut down to the hem. All right. We are going to start to shorten our chiffon layer, this flimsy one. And I do have a contrasting thread in here, but you won't be able to see because it's still not close enough. You will be able to see in the studio. We are going to use a smaller needle. I usually used to keep like a size 16 in my machine. Now I try and keep it to a size 12, 14 for something like this. And fortunately, I can see my line through, but my main thing I'm going to start with now is I'm going to flip my hem up. I'm not cutting anything at this point. I'm going to flip the whole hem up and roll it onto my chop line. And I am going to do that around the whole skirt. And I'm going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch from that fold. And that's going to be my first row of stitching. Got to fold it right up. Let's get going. Oh, let's turn the machine on. Okay, turn it. And all I care about at this point is from this point to here on my table. That's the only areas I can work on right now. So with my needle in, I'm going to look, I can see my next marks are right here. Just roll it and keep it onto that. And just stitch 1/8 of an inch from that. Let's see, make sure we're starting here. It's kind of a fine area. Get going. Pick something up, that'd be nice. Turn that speed's a little slow for me. I'm going to put a little bit smaller of a stitch in. And when I say smaller stitch, every machine is different. I like, for a task like this, probably, I would say 10 to 12, or at least 12 stitches per inch. And so it depends on your machine what will create that. You do want a smaller stitch. If it's too big, it just doesn't look right at the bottom. So just holding that up. I'm holding it with my hands. I still like to give it a little bit of tension to keep my fabric smooth. That's better, better, better. So this is right now is 1/8 of an inch from the fold. You may find some hems that are even less than that. 1/8 of an inch is still going to be good. My theory is no one's pulling out rulers while they're wearing the hem. This will give you a nice 1/8 of an inch fold, and that's what they have originally on this particular dress. So that's what I'm doing. I've done that little bit. Now I'm going to adjust the next little bit, fold it right on top of my chalk mark. There, it's nice and straight from there to there, and we're going to do the next section. Do the next section. That's all we're going to do till we get around. I will hold this up as soon as I get it done. A technique that I use to help keep me and my stitches straight. Every machine is different, and depending on what foot you have, what I am doing is I'm running my fold along the inside of the right toe of the presser foot. I'm at a seam. I'm making sure my seam allowance is going in the correct direction, and I'm helping it over top. Even if you've done a rolled hem, you will know that you need to help coax it over top of those. Adjust my material, and this edge will not necessarily always lie flat because it can be a circle hem. All you want is where you're folding right here to be flat. That's the only area you need to make sure it's straight and flat. There. I have a question for those who are watching. If you're anything like me, when you're on Facebook, you are probably members of other sewing and alteration groups, especially wedding ones. Have you noticed at this particular point in time that there are quite a number of posts of brides who have picked up their wedding dresses and they are very unhappy with their alterations? A lot of times there are a lot of mistakes. They just don't fit right. Now, mind you, in the scheme of things, even if I saw 10 posts a day and all the thousands of brides that are getting married, it's still probably not a lot. But I always find it interesting at this time because everyone's getting married in the summer and they're getting their dresses now, and a lot of time there's issues. So I always like reading through those and seeing, in my opinion, what could have been done differently. What always bothers me is when the seamstress refuses to do anything about anything. If you have an unhappy client, yes, there are the clients that you just can't please, but sometimes there's a lot of truth to if there's an issue. But I have seen lots of those now, and we have a lot of panicked brides, so we want to make sure that they aren't our brides, right? Once again, I want to just, it's hard for you to see here, but if we were to measure the area that I'm flipping up, this area looks like about 6 inches, but here at my side seam, there's about an extra 1/2 inch. That has nothing to do with our marking. It's just how it's cut, and let's see, that is a straight grain there too, but it just could be that the hem wasn't straight in the first place. So we are going to make sure that it's going to be straight. This is our back seam, so it is cut on a straight grain. And just keep flipping the hem flipping the hem so it's on top. This excess is on top. One question I get occasionally is, why am I flipping my hem up right on my chalk line when we're going to flip it again? The 1/8 of an inch that this is going to be flipped in will not make a big difference in our finished hem. And if your dress is floor length, you don't want necessarily touching the floor. It's supposed to go right to the floor. So flipping that up, first of all, I can see my line easier. I don't like having to estimate, well, this is my line, I got to let it down. I just like folding it up on the same line. And then when I flip it up again, the 1/8 of an inch, then we're going to get that perfect hem. That onto there. Ease this extra up. And I can clearly see that this hem is a little woozy right there. Over the years, I have tried many different techniques. Tried many rolled hem feet. Nothing works and gives me a guaranteed success as this method. This area is bias cut, so it's a little bit more shifty, but we just keep on that straight line. When you're doing this particular hem, I can see this here is 1/8. This might be like an extra 1/16 of an inch. This did kind of go a little bit more. It's almost like maybe 2/8 of an inch. I'm not going to worry about that. When we do our second flip, it's going to be a lot cleaner, and we want to keep it, as straight as possible, but I'm not going to take out that little area here. That technically is like maybe about another 1/8 of an inch more. Sometimes you got to know when not to take something out, that it's good enough, and it will still work out. This skirt isn't too bad because it's not super big, but I've had skirts that I've gone around and around and around and around, and I figure sometimes I think I'm just going in a big circle. And it's never ending. This one isn't so bad. Regardless of how full the skirt is, if it's a floor length skirt, even if it's a straight skirt, I will use the skirt marker. I may use a different method for hemming it. If it's a straight skirt, I might not need to use this method, but I will always use the skirt marker, and it guarantees my accuracy. I have another question for my viewers. A skirt like this, would you mind sharing with me how you charge and how much you would charge for something like this in wherever you're located at? I think it's important for us to share with each other our pricing, and to kind of it helps us to feel comfortable that we are keeping our pricing within the same area, same guidelines. It does vary depending on where you're located. I understand that. I'm almost done this area, coming to my slit. One thing I'm going to want to check at the area where it opens up the slit. I used my chalk where it fits to the floor on my client, but I also now want to make sure that there's not a big difference in the slit when it's lined side by side. Okay, so I'm just going to check that, make sure there's not a big difference. This is, okay, I'll see if I can get this. Try not to move this around. I have too much for you. Perfect, that lined up really. See how that turned out? It doesn't always do that. It's more important that when it's lined up, that this is even. Even if it's on your client and the floor level might vary, if it's not even, your client's going to think everyone's going to do this. And if it's off by an inch or so, they're not going to understand that. If they happen to be standing and the hem's right together, then it will be uneven. So just make sure that if there is a slit, that it's even. That's all you need to do. Your customer will look at it and they'll just think that there's a problem. If they think there's a problem, then you have a problem. What we're doing next is we are going to cut off the excess that we just created in here. I'm not sure how you want to do this. There are various methods. Let's see, do I want to do it this way? All right. The main thing you want to do is don't cut your good material. So I'm just going to take my nice sharp scissors and stitch close to my stitching. This does take a little bit because you don't want to go fast, but I basically have about just a little 1/8 of an inch on the other side. Sometimes, I'm trying to think of, it's been a while since I've done this. I'm going to put my dress over here. Yes, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to put it on my pants and open out my seam allowance, because this way I'm just going to glide it along and I can keep that other material out of my way. Whatever works for you, but this allows my material to separate. Maybe in the replay we'll insert some lively music in it. It's one of those areas where you can't go fast. let's touch upon, in case you make a boo-boo and you cut, because I've done it. You cut into your stitching. It's not the end of the world. What I usually would do is take out the stitching I just put in there at that point, just blend it up a little bit more, and chances are, unless you made a giant gash, no one's going to know. And note to self, just try not to do it again. But it's not something that's not fixable. Okay. Oops, almost. Or it gives me a reason to make a new pair. I just thought of an idea that somebody could do. They didn't want to put it on their leg. You could make like a velvet, like a board, that could go onto your table. Maybe I'll have to make one of those. Save some of my pants. The key is having really sharp scissors. That will make a big difference when doing this step. It's a nice clean cut. You don't want to be snagging your material. Dull scissors will do that snagging. And you're more apt to make a mistake and cut the good material. I always keep my scraps until my client picks up. I don't usually offer it to them unless they ask for it. One of the reasons I keep the scraps, in case they want it, you never know, they want to make something out of it. But one of the reasons I don't offer them their scraps, if a client gets this and sees that the hem is not the same all the way around, they're going to panic and think that you did something wrong. So I don't usually show them this because then you have to explain to them about the marking, and it's just easier not to give it to them unless they request it. That's just what I do. Now, this next row of stitching is actually a lot easier. We are going to start at the same spot where we began before, and we're going to take that little bit, the 1/8 that we just sewed in, flip it up another 1/8 of an inch, and top stitch that down. This area will go much quicker because it just does. It's got the body in it already. So let's figure out where our beginning is. Here we are. I'm going to turn that in. And just that little bit. Now, is that exactly 1/8 of an inch? It actually, I don't know. I think it's a little bit more. That, regardless, that little bit, it's probably, let's say 3/16 is what you're going to want for your finished hem. What matters most is when your hem is done, it's parallel and looks the same all the way around. You don't want this area being skinny and then this area coming up in clearly a 1/4 inch hem. Something like that, that's all crooked, is going to show. You just want a nice clean hem, flip it up, and as long as it looks the same all the way around from the inside and the outside, we're good. Turn that in. Anyone who sews might know that when you have a really fine fabric like this, starting really close to that rough edge, sometimes it gets stuck in your machine. I would recommend starting even about 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch into your material. Do your hem, and you can finish that off by flipping it right side up. And when you're done, just cleaning that up there. It helps prevent that area from getting stuck into the hole of your machine, and it's just a lot easier to start, especially when it's a fabric that's really soft and shifty like this one. So we're going to flip her in. There we go. Get it underneath. Line it up where I want my top stitching. And I like also that with this new, the fact it has the hem in here, it gives me a little bit more body. Oh, don't want that. I can put a little bit of tension on my fabric. I can pull out any excess here. What I want is to make sure this same amount is flipped in, and my top stitching on the good side is going to be parallel all the way around. And there on the outside, we have a beautiful rolled hem there. I'll show that up closer after I'm done. The seam allowance in this dress has the French seam. I am going to trim that up just a little bit more to make it a little easier to turn in. Ease it over this bump. And just continue on. as I'm sewing, I'm using this hand and sometimes even my elbow to make sure this material is smooth and taut in this direction, just so it's nice and smooth. This seems good, so we're just going to help it get over that little bump. I'm lifting up my presser foot to make sure everything's just lying flat. There we go. We're off to the next section. If you have any questions while I'm working and I don't get them answered right away, don't worry, I will answer any questions and address any comments after this, and you will see them once this is posted also on, well, you see it on Facebook, but we'll try and get some of them on YouTube too. I'm not sure how we do that, but we'll figure that out. I will address any of your questions. Another seam, flip her in. I'm holding it down with my fingers right here. Over the bump. And down the other side. One of the tricks of making sure we're sewing in a straight line, hold your material and let the machine do all the work. It's like when you're driving a car, don't oversteer it. I'm going to finish this right off. We have, oh, beautiful. Might be hard to see, but we'll show a close-up in just a second. But that is a beautiful little hem. Now, one thing, I'm looking at this, and remember, I'm doing this in a contrast color, so things show more. This is like perfect, perfect, perfect. And then here, it looks like it goes up maybe, I'm going to say like even less than a 1/16 of an inch. When it goes over this bump, there's a little bit. No one's going to notice that. What you need is that if you're looking at it just like this, that it's looking, oh, that's good, good, good. My rule of thumb is if I'm looking at it like this, and then I go, ooh, if I have to ask somebody, or if I think I need to ask somebody, does that look okay there? Then there's a problem. Fix it. It might only be a little area, just fix it. But if you have to ask somebody, then you're concerned about it, but don't get over concerned. Looking good. I just always like to do a quick check. So I'm going to now finish off. Remember, I started in a little bit on the first side. Let's trim that thread, and I'm going to finish off that stitching there. Remember, we're always matching up our colors. Another thing I see a lot on Facebook sewing posts, people will show a dress in like 4 different colors of thread that can be used for the hem, and they want our opinion. First of all, I think, well, they all could be used. They're all fine. There might be one that just might be a definite no, but in the long run, either of them can be used. But I just think it's interesting. And then also on Facebook, I'm not going to see the garment like it looks like in person, so I just think it's kind of humorous. Gives me something to fill my void hours, I guess. This is my doom scrolling. There, that's done. We would go to the iron and give that a press, but our chiffon is now done. And that's usually the hardest part. With our lining, I need to get a, let me see, do I need a piece of chalk right now? Nope, I don't, because that lines up. I can see my chalk marks right through. And we have to remember that, especially with this dress, the 2 layers were exactly the same and joined exactly the same where it joins. There was no variance. But your lining has to be shorter than the outside material, otherwise it's going to show. So we're going to keep our hem the same where it joins, but we're going to bring it up. If our chalk line is there, we're going to shorten this probably about 1 inch all the way around. when it's shorter. That way we're going to be guaranteeing it's not going to show. This other technique that I had seen, let's see how that would work. I'm thinking, let me think. That would go there. I'm trying to think. They use a stabilizer, and here's where it's kind of, I can't wrap my mind around it. You would almost have to cut your hem first, but they didn't cut their hem first. There. Okay, let's see. I'm going to see if I can work this out. If we're going to use their removable stabilizer method, I've seen it done with paper as well. I've also seen it done with that roll band. Roll band, I have not tried. And my only thing with roll band, yes, it can be used more than once. If I put the roll band in and I sew it to the width that I want, and then I do my flip, how's it going to guarantee I'm going to be able to pull that roll band out perfectly unless some of my stitches happen to hit the roll band? I don't know. I like doing my own method, which is if I was doing this lining the way my video shows, I would either just cut it on that line, cut it to where I need, and just do a 1/4 inch hem. This is about a little bit shy of a 1/4 inch hem, but I would probably just do a narrow rolled hem because it's knit and it's the lining. It's always going to turn in a little nicer. You could do this hem exactly the same way we did our chiffon. Flip it up as long as we're doing it the 1 inch shorter than our chalk marks, and then trim it and do your second row of stitching. That would work too. But I normally would just cut it and then just do a narrow 1/4 inch hem, because it doesn't have to be as perfect and precise, but being the knit and the fact that it is stretchy, have a bit more body, it's going to turn in well. But using this method that they have done, we're going to pretend that my interfacing is the dissolvable, I think it's a dissolvable, what do you call it, stabilizer. So it's supposed to wash it and it goes away. So let me think. They stitch it right side together, because they're going to do a flip on the inside, double stitch. Let me give this a try first. I'm going to have to do a little test. It's one of those things I got to think about. I didn't like the hem roll. Let me see. I don't like the band roll method because the measurements are not. You're right, yes, a snagging. And you're right, the roll band is pretty stiff. I didn't backstitch on my good one yet because I just ran off on it. And then that's also, I used a small stitch, and it's going to be included in, it's going to be encased in this seam, so I did not do my backstitching for that. Sometimes I find when we're doing the backstitching at this really fine area, that's another time when we get that little bird nest thing, or it gets stuck into the hole, so I like running it right off. So I do that. All right, so let's see. I'm going to give this a little try. I'm going to do maybe a few inches of it and see if it's working. So this area right here has to be, okay, right at that hem. So I'm going to just line this up. Let's give it a go. Okay, I'm just going to start here first. Do a few stitches, get started. So I'm doing right sides together right now, which is the right side of the lining, just to get started here. And now I'm going to want to move this up about 1 inch. So I'm just eyeballing this myself. If this is my finished hem here, I am going to move this up just visually. I'm just doing it by eye right now. So let's bring that up. And okay. So I think now my stitching is about 1 inch from what I'm doing is I'm making sure if this is my finished hem, no, the old finished hem of the outside material, I'm hemming about 1 inch in. We're just giving this a little whirl right now to see how this goes. What I do like is this material has more stability than this, and I like having it on top, that is making it a little easier to sew. And I'm sure that fused or dissolvable stabilizer would also have a little bit more body than your shiftiest of materials. Okay, we're just going to keep on going. Like I said, this is our test one. I cut these in strips just so I'd have enough to get around. Make sure your seam allowances are lying in the right place when you get there. Okay, so another one. I don't do embroidery or anything like that, so I don't really have any fusible stabilizer or dissolvable stabilizer. I don't think I'd buy any just for this particular little thing either. I probably wouldn't do this often. the lesson here for doing hems, especially on a variety of fabrics. It really relies on, has to do with the fabric itself. I don't think there's an exact one method will fit everything. So I'm sure there are times when roll band would work, where this dissolvable stabilizer method would work. It's just knowing when to use them. I personally find, though, when I do this chiffon hem the way that I teach, that it works all the time. And it's guaranteed I know how long it's going to take. When you are in any business where your time is money, whether you are the person getting paid or somebody's paying you, when you're charging somebody, you need to have that knowledge, knowing how long it's going to take, and the guarantee that it's going to be done in that time frame. I'm heading back to where the two hems join, so I'm going to gradually veer that down. I can see my chalk even right through this material. All right. All right. Okay. Let's see what we're doing. I'm going to trim this up, get this out of here. The concept now is I am supposed to trim everything to 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, whatever you're hemming that to. So I'm going to trim everything to that. If you get a formal dress or a bridesmaid dress where the lining is just serged and nothing's been done to it, just serging, you can just leave it like that. I'm sure that's okay. I still like to finish it off. Even if I serge it and flip it up the amount that you need, whether it's 1/4 or 1/8 or 1/2 inch, whichever, I still like to finish it off. One of the reasons being, even when it's just serged, you can get a lot of runs, and that's something you got to be careful with the knit material, especially a lot of bridesmaid dresses are using this knit for their lining and even for their outer materials. You can get runs in it, and you don't want to be handing a dress back to a client with runs in it. Almost there. Okay. Now, so the concept is now that this additional fabric is joined on, it should flip up. It gives it a little bit more body to flip in. You see how that does make a really nice, clean little line there? So we're going to give it a go. Especially if something's really soft, like this. It does give it a bit more body. I still would be concerned with whether the dissolvable stabilizer. Well, first of all, if you use a dissolvable stabilizer, you're not washing the dress. So the stabilizer is going to stay in until you wash the dress. So technically, even when you would pull this away, it's still going to stay inside. So might not the same. Yes, I'm using the same stitch length right now as from the outside material. I still just have a smaller stitch length for that. Don't get too caught up on exact stitch lengths. As long as it looks neat, as long as it kind of resembles the original, that's all that matters. Most people wouldn't understand stitch length if it hit them in the head. So what's happening right now is you want to make sure that the seam allowance is tucked right in, and it does give it some nice body here, a nice little hem. So let's go and stitch that. I'm going to start inside a little bit once again, and yes, I just got to make sure everything's tucked inside. See, that for me is just giving me another task, I guess. But okay. Yeah, it's okay. I just think I feel like it's more work, but. Boom. It looks good from this side. It's okay. But I think I still would do it my original way, which is just do a narrow rolled hem. Cut it and then do your rolled hem. Now, mind you, if this was a stabilizer, let me see if this is going to come out. Okay. Oh, that's not bad. Ah, that did come off nicely there. I'm just using like a cheap interfacing myself for this. And that did come out really, really nicely. I was kind of worried that there might be a problem, but there isn't, so that's good. So we're just going to keep going. I don't know if I would recommend this. I still think it's a little bit more piddly than just the way that I normally do it. Because now I got to get this. If I had gone all the way around and stitched the first flip, then it'd be in there. Now I have to go, I've already stitched once around, and now I'm going around again, fussing, making sure the seam allowance is tucked in. So to me, it's taking more time than I normally would have. One thing I think that should be a goal with any trade, and I believe it is for most trades, is the standard that people are doing things the same way. Yes, I know there are many ways to make a hamburger, but at McDonald's it must taste like a Big Mac. So I think it's the same when it comes to trades. If I was a plumber, there may be different ways to do things, I'm sure, but standardized ways are how I'm going to have to do it. It guarantees a good finish, the fastest finish, and best for my client. Good work. Everyone's doing it the same. And I'm one of those people who believe alterations industry is one of those things. Believe me, not everyone agrees with me, but it's just, I think it would be a good thing for everybody. Yeah, I would not do this again myself. That's just me. It's wasting my time. Could have been done. Not liking this at all, but that's how we learn. I'm not so proud to think that all my ways are all the perfect ways. A lot of them are good, and I do like looking through Facebook, and I find a lot of really fast ways to do particular things, like sewing in pockets and clean ways to finish off zippers. This one is not one of my favorites. I guess we won't know until we try it, right? Almost there. Another reason I'm going to rule this method out is because whatever you use, tissue paper, band roll, any of those, the stabilizer is another expense you're going to have to buy to do a hem you don't need to be using. So this is going to be a big no from the Jackson Sewing Academy. Let's just peel this off. Okay, and that's one thing I thought too, it might not all come out, and now I have to fight with this. So we'll just get this out for now, and we'll pretend that it's perfect on the inside and that I didn't do this. All right. Yeah. No, that's not going to happen. All right. Try and get some of this out. Yeah, I'm not going to fight with it. And once again, if I have to play around with this, that's just more time. And time is money in our trade. There we go. All right. So I would not do that for a client. Like I said, I do not like it. One other thing I do not like, and I'm not sure whether the stabilizer would make a difference, is this material is normally stretchy, and now it's not stretching like it's supposed to. So what's going to happen is anything like that, they pull on it, now we're going to have broken stitches. So I would much rather have the fabric working the way it's supposed to and not playing with that fussy material we just did. I'm going to fix the area I just tore. And put a regular rolled hem in that. Because even a regular rolled hem, even with a straight stitch machine, will still have a bit more give. I'm just rolling this in with my finger and it's going in nicely. So that's what we will do from here on in, unless some fancy gadget comes up, which hasn't so far in all these years of sewing, so I'm thinking it doesn't exist. Yeah, that's it. Just rolling the hem in. And that made a really nice hem, just me turning that in. So I'm not going to show you this wonky area here because I don't like that. But the top stitched hem I just did there turned out nicely. And when we press it, it'll go nice and flat. And see if I can get a little closer with some of my hem here. Oh, I hate standing up. This is our, oh, that's the wrong side, sorry. Take two. And this is our outside hem, right there. Nice and straight. Last step, we are going to resew the lining to the outside material. And the original technique was just sewn and then edge stitched to the lining. You always edge stitch into your lining. Trim, trim, trim. Make sure my edge stitching is undone a little higher, maybe about 3/4 to 1 inch more than my seam. That allows me to get that stitching in right. When sewing the two layers together, let me think. The chiffon is actually your more stable material right now because it doesn't stretch. It's on the straight grain. So I always want to have my stable material on top. Overlap the original's seam stitch a little bit. So I can still see some edge stitching here. It's getting in my way. Yep. So I'm going to join my lining and the outer material, overlap just a little, and I will be doing a little front and back security stitch there. I want to make sure my two layers are exactly the same. So make sure they're even. I'm holding it just with my fingers here and do a nice straight stitch down and do secure with a little front and back there. This particular garment was not serged at all either, so I'm not going to do any serging. If it was serged, we would have to serge any of the seams. And now I'm going to push the seam allowance to the lining side. And without any of these straggler stitches, you don't want any stragglers. Overlap your edge stitching about 1 inch or so. Nice and clean. Push everything over. And I like to also take this little area that's kind of where it's joined, make sure at the bottom that it's kind of tucked in. Sometimes I might actually flip it a little, make a little corner so it's clean. Tuck under those raw edges or the areas that are sticking out. All front and back, and done. There. And so I tucked that little area in, so it's almost like a mitered corner. Just tuck it in so it's not going to be peeking out. Trim up our threads, and to have nice edge stitching. Clean that up to the other side. That's fine. Easiest way. Find our slit. Which side do we still have to do? That one. That's the thing with some of these dresses, I get all twisted around, not sure where I'm at. There I am. There. I'm undoing my edge stitching up here just enough. I probably should have undid my edge stitching a little higher in the beginning, saves me doing it now. But your edge stitching has to be released about 1 inch or so more than your regular stitch. That way you can see, get your regular stitching done. This one we are starting, what I'm going to do is I want to make sure my stable fabric, which is my outer material, is on the top. In order for me to do that, I don't want to start at the bottom. So I'm actually just going, one of those rare times that I'm going to put my sewing to the opposite side so I can start higher up and sew down. Not often I do this, but I want to keep the stable fabric on top, and it's just easier than trying to start where two pieces are. If I were to try and start here, it's not going to work. It's going to get caught into the hole, and it's going to be a big mess. So this way, okay, get that there. Under machine, and the machine is holding it for me. Do my little front and back, and sew straight down. Good, good, good. Trim that up. And these straggler threads, clean them up. Press everything, the seam allowance to the lining, and do your edge stitching. And I'm going to clean up some of these strings here and tuck my corner under so that it gets caught in here. All right. Technically, we are done. I'm going to go to the iron, give everything a quick press, put her back on the mannequin, and you can see what everything looks like. We would have to put our layers together using our hand stitching. let me be honest, I don't always replace those. When it's a dress like this, I don't replace it a lot. Sometimes I just don't because I just don't. You can if you want. You can be angry at me if you're one of those people who do. But especially on a skirt like this, everything's so big and flowy, it's going to move around anyways. But that's just me. I don't want to go without it. And we're just going, I have this on silk. Everyone has a different setting, but I'm not going to use the press cloth. I know my iron. I know what's going to melt and what's not going to melt. And a lot of times I don't use one. If it's a black material, I might. If you don't want to get that shine, that's why it's a polyester. I don't. Because then I end up getting more wrinkles a lot. I'm not saying that there isn't times when I do use one. I can see better. I get a better press. This is another reason I love my pressing table, because I don't even use my tabletop iron board right now. I can press everything right on my table. Everything looks so much better once you get it pressed. Another little thing to keep in mind, this particular dress I got at the secondhand store, but occasionally people are going to bring you a dress that is really wrinkled, especially if they're buying dresses online and they're getting shipped in bags. Unless they're paying you to steam the dress, you're only going to press the areas that you work on. You're not going to press the whole garment. Time is money, and occasionally I'll have a bride or a bridesmaid let me know that they have their own steamer, and that's fine. So you only do that if they're paying you. Yeah, I won't be using that hem again. I'm just going to go through it with my original way. Same way that's in the manual and the videos. I'm not sure what time is it. Lauren, can you tell me what our time's like?
11:29.
So even with all my babbling and us just talking and going through this, we're still under our 2-hour mark. So if I had done this from beginning to end and just done it, probably could have gotten it done almost in an hour. I have done this before in an hour, but even an hour and 15 minutes or so, and we're still at the $80 mark. So that's not too bad for making some money. Go. It's done. So let's put it on the mannequin. Now, see, right here at the very bottom, it's just touching my pedestal. I'm going to spin it around, just touching that pedestal. Even I'm pretty impressed with this hem today. Just touching, that's beautiful. What makes the biggest difference in any kind of hem like this? Starting with the right tool, getting the right mark in the beginning. If you don't have that right, however you do your hem, it's not going to be a successful hem. This is perfect. That's exactly what we want right there. Lovely. And I can see my lining is about 1 inch, 1.25 inches, shorter underneath, and that's perfect. The original garment, the lining was probably almost 3 inches, and I didn't like that. Usually your lining would be about inch and a quarter. So it doesn't show, but also just so you don't want to have so short that people can see light underneath. But no, I am very happy with this. What we will do is we will have some still shots of the finished hem, and you will see that on the replay. This way you can actually get a better view, see what it looks like. I'm not just saying it looks good and it doesn't look good, but I really want you to get a good view of this. But that's about it. I'm glad we got done in this time frame, because my goal is for you, every time you do it, you're getting a little bit better, a little bit faster, so that you too can get a dress like this done in under 2 hours. If this was an extra full skirt, we probably would have taken the 2-hour mark. But do remember, if this was an extra full skirt, I'd be doing almost $50, $60 per layer. So you're still making the money that you're going to be needing. And remember, it's not all about your time. It's also about the fact that you know how and they don't. So keep that in mind. I want to thank everyone who's joined me. I will answer all your questions, get to them after when I'm finished here. But I want to thank you for joining me, and hope you enjoyed this lesson. And I look forward to seeing some of your posts. If you do something like this, put it on our Facebook group. Love to see some of the work that you're doing. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.